by Trump coming in with the ferocity that he has, it's going to make all those arguments. It's going to put him front and center on the public stage, and America's going to get to throw their support behind it, and hopefully the courts do the same thing, and we can accomplish a lot. But we're in the early innings, and this game is going to be going on for a while. But I do know that Trump is really thinking in terms of a deadline. He thinks he's not thinking like day 15. He's more thinking like, 2 years minus 15 days, and we've only got so many more days to accomplish what we want to accomplish. So he's acting with a sense of urgency that we've never seen before.
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. And man, what a January it has been. 2 weeks of January, 11 days, and now we're not even 3 weeks into the second term, non-consecutive term of President Trump. And well, Bill Walton is with us, host of the Bill Walton Show. Bill, you are a vice chairman of CPAC, long-term CEO of the New York Stock Exchange Traded Investment Company. So you kind of know business and politics. And if you're like me, you probably prefer business, but politics becomes unavoidable. This has been the most incredible opening salvo of an administration that I have ever seen. You agree with that?
Oh yeah, and I like most of it. Fantastic. I worked on his transition. In 2016, I headed up all the financial agencies, writing action plans and headed up the landing teams. And this is night and day. And this is just, before he wasn't really prepared. Now he's totally prepared. I feel like
prepared.
I feel like he's been like Eisenhower planning D-Day, and he's hit the beaches, but he's not just hit a couple of beaches. He's hit 95 different things in a little over 2 weeks. It's great.
And he's caught the opposition flat-footed, hasn't he?
Yeah, shock and awe.
Shock and awe.
They're back. They're back on their heels. That's for sure. And I live in the Washington D.C. area, and it's So 95% of the Kamala vote, and it's a great pleasure to watch them suffer.
Cringe, huh? Yeah. So, I'm going to talk about what do you think the three most significant things that he's done, actions he's taken in the first. We're at 3 weeks, right?
Not even 2.5 weeks.
Yeah, 2.5 weeks. It's a remarkable start. I've followed politics, and I've heard a lot of people say they're going to come to Washington and change the culture, and invariably the culture changes them. Perhaps going back to Reagan, I was barely alive when Kennedy came with his eggheads, as they called them, the best of academia, and they screwed things up even worse. And then, LBJ, all that awful. But Reagan was really going to be a disruptor and everything else. And to some extent, he slowed down the pace of spending, but he was never able, and he cut taxes, of course, but he was never able to effectuate the change. This is something we've never seen anything like before, have we?
Never. Not in the history of the government employees union, that's for sure. And when was the civil service formed? In 1870, 1880, after I guess Grant's administration. They used political appointees to pay people off, and they thought, gee, we'll create a permanent group of bureaucrats, and they'll be much better than political appointees. Well, they were wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they're the most entrenched. But so we're looking at, these executive orders, which I guess presidents have always had this power to issue them. But these are so directed and so focused and disruptive, right? I mean, it's just we never.
Well, yeah, and here's where we are though. He's been rapid fire executive orders, and I like. There might be one I don't like, but I haven't seen it. And issuing executive orders to end DEI and climate change mandates. They had a wholly government approach to that under Biden, and so he just, with the stroke of a pen, says every department of the federal government is going to purge itself of its DEI emphasis, and also their programs have also been supporting the climate change agenda. So, and then we're all watching with just discussed really what USAID has been up to, and with the stroke of a pen he shut down USAID. Now this is an example, I think, of where we're going to end up 6 months from now. Is a lot of this that he's doing, it's unclear whether he's got the authority to do it. Some of it's got to be Congress, and so this is going to the armies of lawyers are just beginning their work. So this is once I feel like we can take the beaches, but once we start moving inland, I think we're going to meet with a lot more resistance. It doesn't mean we can't get the things done, but it's going to look ugly as the infighting gets going.
Yeah, well, that U.S. aid, which is there's no aid in it really. It's the Agency for International Development's always been a cutout for the CIA, a front for them, exercising American soft power. Yeah, there's yes, they do feed people rice and beans around the world, health things, but, projection of soft power. But man, the corruption there is just so deep. They're even financing the lawfare prosecutors to go after Trump. They finance Trump's impeachment, and then they're funding all the illegal immigrants coming into the country to the tune of over $500 million. I mean, this is insane here.
Well, the other thing that's come out just recently is that they just today they funded $10 million of meals to Al-Qaeda-linked terrorists.
Oh, it's nice of them. Were they halal compliant?
Probably. And it's interesting. You call it a CIA cutout, and that's certainly true. But the thing to think about now is CIA's changed dramatically in the last decade, 2 decades, and the CIA has become about as woke as many universities. And my friend Mike Waller wrote a book called Big Intel. He has been long followed the CIA, and they've been promoting these diversity programs and all the various things that Trump is reversing. And so the CIA is actually exporting those diversity programs to the USAID recipients. So it's not your grandfather's CIA. It's a totally different agenda.
Yeah, and wow, it just all of the things that we're doing, and I assume we're going to see this in many other departments. These slush funds. I know for a fact that after the mortgage meltdown in 2008 and 2009, the government sued all these banks, and they all set aside money for all these different purposes, and basically they became slush funds. I'm sure they're still floating around there, right?
Absolutely. Well, there's a slush fund sitting out right out in the open. There's a $400 billion fund at the Department of Energy that, in a long time ago, was the unit that funded Solyndra. You remember that?
Yeah, sure.
And now it's been run by John Podesta, and it's been doling money out to windmill projects and solar and so on and so forth. And, the amount of graft and corruption that I think we'll see once the Doge starts auditing that fund will make the numbers at USAID look like chump change.
Yeah. So Musk says he thinks he can save $4 billion a day, which would be the equivalent, right, of about $1.5 trillion. Could it possibly be that much waste?
Well, yeah, I think so. But waste is a funny thing because it's not just spending extra money. Remember the Pentagon with their spending, $900 for a toilet seat or something like that. There's that kind of waste, but there's also just the I would call it total misallocated resources, hiring consultants that you don't need, grossing it up. And it's, once you start looking at what the purpose of any of these agencies is, I think we're going to find that their mission creep has been extensive and that a lot of money is getting spent on things that aren't even closely related to what that agency is supposed to be doing, which we're seeing in the case of AID. I mean, AID sent $6.3 million to study men having sex with other men in South Africa.
Well, that was necessary. Well, remember the toilet seats at the Pentagon? Well, now they're spending $1,200 on these insulated cups for airplanes because they can't leak or anything. And you could buy them on Amazon for like $30. The waste is just monumental, but it's crazy. And then they're paying opposition liberal press, right? $32 million to Politico. That's from all aspects of government. And then the people who are writing the checks at the Treasury are told never to reject a payment, to make every single payment, no matter what, whether it's fraud related, terror related, or whatever. Is that any way to run an airline here, Bill?
Well, of course not. It's what they're doing is they came into the dark room of the federal government and threw a bright spotlight into it, and all the cockroaches are running like mad, scattering. And so, as you point out, it's not just USAID, but all the other agencies have similar kinds of misallocation of resources. And the thing I was talking about, Matt Schlapp's chairman of CPAC, and we were talking this morning, the legality of what Trump's doing, whether it needs to be Congress's authorized by Congress, is unclear in many cases. But what is clear is that by the work that Elon Musk is doing, he's exposing egregious behavior in public opinion, which has been behind Trump. His approval ratings that are all-time high. I think his public opinion ratings and the support that Americans going to have to put an end and to dismantle this stuff is going to be unprecedented. I mean, everybody kind of had a guess about this was bad. We heard this, that, the other, but now you lay it all out. And I only mentioned one example. There are like 30 or 40 examples USAID of stuff that makes you sick.
Yeah. And we knew the money was being wasted. We just didn't know the specifics. We sensed it was bad, at least this bad, because from 2019, and we weren't exactly spending money responsibly then, to now, the budget's gone up $1.5 trillion, and it's not like we're getting anything more for our money here. So this is but we talked last time, and you and I were among the few talking about it, President's Impoundment Authority. So do you think the Supreme Court will say to the president, you got to spend this money that Congress allocated, even if you're literally digging a hole, putting the money in there and lighting it ablaze? If the Congress says you have to do it, you have to do it. Can the Supreme Court really rule that way, or is there a middle ground?
Well, isn't that the thing that they nailed Nixon on?
Yeah, but that...
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, that was during Watergate. You really didn't put any attention to it. It went to the Supreme Court. That was the Warren Court. And things have changed.
Well, see, that's my point, my earlier point about public opinion. I mean, Nixon, when he tried to exert that power, was one of the most unpopular presidents in American history, and consequently, ruling against him was a slam dunk. I think with Trump, with public opinion, when is it back? I would suspect the courts are, they pay a lot more attention to public opinion and what people really feel like they want than they will admit. And so the public opinion climate and the legal climate, I think, could be different. And if the president could, in fact, invoke impoundment powers, that would be a massive improvement over what we have now. And I think there's a good chance that Trump is going to win that argument.
I think so too. There's got to be a rule of reason here, right? You can't just say that if somebody's driving the car at 150 miles an hour and heading towards a cliff, that the state trooper can't pull him over. And, it's the same thing here with the spending. So there's going to be a middle ground. But you can't have these discretionary spending programs at these agencies. It's all got to be written down what they can spend it on and what they can't. That's part of the problem here, because discretionary spending turns into slush funds.
Well, yeah, and I think Congress, with the Supreme Court ruled on Chevron, and what had happened was Congress had really kicked all the decisions and power over to the executive branch's agencies, and the agencies were writing the rules and regulations, and Congress really wasn't involved. Well, now the ruling, in its essence, says Congress, you've got to specify what you want and what you don't, and you could actually go to these agencies and say, well, you're doing 35 things that were never authorized by law, so you got to stop doing it. So that's going to be a tool to choose, I think, to implement a lot of the DOJ's recommendations.
Yeah, we saw it like EPA, a lot of these things. If we don't have the right to uphold these regulations or implement them, then we certainly don't have the right to spend money at the behest of these improperly promulgated regulations. I guess what the Supreme Court is saying is that Congress has got to do its job under the Constitution. They can't delegate it to an agency that will then run roughshod or do its own interpretation of it, right?
Absolutely. And by Trump coming in with the ferocity that he has, it's going to make all those arguments, it's going to put him front and center on the public stage, and America's going to get to throw their support behind it, and hopefully the courts do the same thing, and we can accomplish a lot. But we're in the early innings, and this game is going to be going on for a while. But I do know that Trump is really thinking in terms of a deadline. He's not thinking like day 15. He's more thinking like, what is it? 2 years minus 15 days, and we've only got so many more days to accomplish what we want to accomplish. So he's acting with a sense of urgency that we've never seen before.
And the psychological damage that he has inflicted upon his opponents is immeasurable, because they were not prepared for this. They thought, okay, so it's Trump point 2. We'll oppose him. We'll go through the game. We'll stop him from doing what he wants to do. And that'll be that. And nothing could be further from the truth. To actually see, an administration this prepared before they walk in the door. He was doing this for months and months, supposedly had his round table there, and the executive orders were stacked up and ready to go. And, I think he'll let it settle down a little bit, and then the next phase will come in. I mean, this is orchestrated, it's strategic, and it's designed to do the most psychological damage to the Democrats, and it's working.
And it's, we're doing audio only, but I'm grinning ear to ear. Well, he also has a way to, people mount an opposition to a specific thing, and then the next day he comes out with something else that makes their head spin. I mean, the something else that came out this week was Gaza, and him
Yeah.
basically standing up like the real estate developer that he is, and saying, well, Gaza's got 25 miles of pristine beaches and some of the best, clearest waters in the Mediterranean. This would make a great resort. And cutting through it, that's kind of, and I don't think he's serious about that, but what he's doing is he's changing the debate. And
Exactly.
the whole thing about two state, one state, the whole thing we've been arguing over for 50, 60, 70 years, this changes the terms of that and puts, and I also don't see, he didn't say anything about bringing American military to bear. We might show up with an army of real estate developers, but that's about it.
Well, the look on Netanyahu's face, and Netanyahu's good poker player.
Not when he said that.
Like his jaw dropped, and his son, what is he talking about now? But just to muddy up the waters and to take over the news cycle onto the next, and I think the opposition's wholly unprepared for what they're up against this time, and it's going to take them a while to regroup. We're going to have lawsuits, everything else. But the fact is, a lot of things are going to change. And certainly the open borders are no longer open.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So Trump derangement syndrome, though, 2.0, it's through the roof. And, these people are like, you can't even reason with them at all now, Bill.
Well, if you look at who they elected as chairman and vice chairman of the Democratic National Committee, they haven't learned any lessons at all from the election, and they're still coming out of that meeting talking about LGBTQ agenda, the open border, the climate agenda, the EPA's attempt to sort of ban all convenient appliances because they use too much electricity, and voters don't want that. If you get a long list of things that they do care about, what the DNC is articulating doesn't show up in anybody's top 20. So they're not doing anything right now to retain or regain public support for their agenda. But the fact is, they don't really have an agenda beyond those cultural items. I mean, they never had an economic growth agenda. You couldn't name a thing that Biden did that was promoting economic growth. Everything they did was, in a sense, meant to crush the economy, not grow it. So
yeah,
they got to figure out what Americans really want, and right now they're lost.
Totally. It just reminds me of that quote from Talleyrand: "They have learned nothing and forgotten nothing."
That's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, totally. So what about the prospects of getting rid of the income tax? Is that possible here? Do we switch to it? You can't just get it from the tariffs because we got $4 trillion worth of trade. It just can't be done. Right now, we're collecting $80 billion in tariffs, which is roughly a 2% across the board tariff rate. 50 times that is $4 trillion. It just can't be done. But maybe a national sales tax? What do we do?
Well, I think you got to break it into pieces. Like getting rid of the income tax, don't see it, not enough revenue. But getting rid of the income tax code, or at least most of it, and radically simplifying. Americans, I forgot the number. I did have it on the tip of my tongue, but we spend hundreds of billions of dollars complying with the tax code, and your corporations do, and all. Think of it all the time that small business people spend, dealing with their tax stuff and all the other regulatory stuff. Just by dramatically simplifying the tax code, I think that gets you a long way to what we want, and that would free up entrepreneurial energy to do something other than fill out papers for tax bureaucrats in Washington.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. So, But the idea of a national sales tax just seems to be better because it's automatic. Nobody complains about it, and it's just passed through, and that's that, because you're going to pay it either way.
Well, there's something else that we've all gotten used to, but we should get rid of it, is that the IRS with the income tax gets to know most of all your personal business through your tax filings. And so the invasion of privacy that they've inserted into the United States, and I don't know, when did they start the tax thing? 1912?
Yeah.
One of those years. 13. Yeah. And, so just getting rid of that and substituting a sales tax. I mean, if they want to know what I'm spending my money on, I'm okay with that. But knowing all my sources of income, all the various, real estate properties, whatever it is the people own, federal government has no right to know all that.
And then decisions get made on purely economic grounds, not on, gee, it'll save me taxes here. Isn't that a great thing? And the amount of time, like you say, that we waste going into preparing taxes, and I call it my annual denial ritual. I put it off as long as I possibly can till I finally do it. And yeah, it's just craziness here, really craziness. Well, a lot of things are changing here. Like you say, Milton Friedman said it, and I guess it was done during FDR's first 100 days. I wasn't around then. This is probably the equivalent to FDR's first 100 days, maybe even more than that,
I'll go out on a limb. I don't know, not much of a limb. It's much more than what FDR did in the first 100 days. And the part of the reason is the government has grown so enormously since FDR began implementing his so-called New Deal. So just and Trump is ranging across the whole scope of government with his changes. So yeah, I'd say this is historical, and it took the country coming to the brink to get us to do that, and we were at the brink. And he's pulled us back some, but there's a whole lot we still got to get done.
What I'd love to see is passing a rule, the government saying that anybody that gets federal aid and that has at least a $500 million or $1 billion budget, any governmental entity at any level, city, state, local, fire department, whatever, they got to set up a Doge in that department. And some states are actually passing statutes now, setting up their own Doges. And I think that should be a basic requirement. Hey, one final thing. California. Is there hope for that state now after what they've been through, what we've seen happen as a result of governmental incompetence, Bill?
Well, there's always hope. But have they learned anything? The politician in Sacramento have learned nothing. And so long as the California voters want to load up their legislature with the people who think like they do and pass the laws they've passed and have really driven business out of California. And I think California has the largest homeless population, largest population of illegal immigrants. Talk about living on the brink. So have they learned anything? And will they change? I don't know. Gavin Newsom is still trying to get in front of the parade, saying he'd all figured this out. We turned water on. I guess I'm a little pessimistic that California is going to have a new playbook unless California produces somebody like Trump to become their governor.
Well, maybe Caruso will be the answer. Certainly, they're going to boot their mayor of L.A. I mean, that's inevitable. The problem is the way it's set up is the city council just picks another dupe, and that's not going to accomplish much.
Well, as long as we have Democrat governance of all our major cities, they're not going to get turned around.
Yeah. Well, I think this election was a wake up. We saw the country shift to the right measurably, even in the most bluest of places. So maybe if they see these policies working, we could see some change here, Bill.
Okay. Well, I say there's hope. Huh? I'm with it.
All right. Hey, well, we really appreciate you coming by.
Great
When's
talking with you.
next,
Yeah.
CPAC event?
When is it? We're in 2 weeks. We've got our big CPAC event at National Harbor, which is just across the river from D.C. And we've got a tremendous lineup of speakers. And, President Trump always comes, and we expect that to happen this year as well. So it's going to be exciting. And, before the last several years, it's been a little gloomy because of what was happening with Biden and Kamala Harris. Now I think it's going to be a joyous celebration, and I think it'd be really fun for everybody to come because this is going to be a good party.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Sounds like it. Well, maybe I'll try to join there for this. Sounds great.
Just come.
Yeah, definitely.
And the tickets are $95 for people who want to do the general admission part of it, and you get to see everything with that. And so it's not meant to be. There's no financial barriers to coming in and joining in the frolic.
All right. Well, we'll throw a link to it in the show notes to this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Appreciate you coming on as always, Bill. We'll talk to you again soon.
Kerry, thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.